I'm Paul Edwards. I'm a self-published horror author, and first and foremost, a monster kid. Today I'm reading Famous Monsters of Filmland, issue 42 from 1966, with a special article on Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, one of my favorite horror films from the 1940s. In fact, I'm even wearing my Frankenstein meets the Wolfman t-shirt in honor of the occasion. So let's dive right into this vintage monster magazine and see what kinds of monster kid goodness is in here. This cover of Famous Monsters of Filmland has an artist's rendition of the big final battle between the Frankenstein monster and the Wolfman. It's very stylized. The Frankenstein monster wasn't known for throwing punches. He was more of a grappling, wrestling kind of monster. But the Wolfman is pretty much on point. And I just think the picture is great. I love the over-the-top text. The world explodes when Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. Special in this issue. Well, spoiler alert, the world did not explode in this movie, but it was an awesome showdown between two of the great monsters. But we'll get into that as we get to the article. Let's see what we get in this issue. Of course, we get Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. We get an interview with Christopher Lee. The monster speaks. King Kong returns, but it's not what it sounds like. Mystery Photo is a monthly feature of theirs. Aliens, Beasts, and Creatures. Monsterama. Headlines from Horrorsville. Monster Mix-Up. Oh my gosh. There's so much good stuff in here. We just gotta get right to it. All right, we're starting out with a movie that has been released under several different names. You might know it as Island of Terror, or as The Creepers, or as The Night of the Silicates, or The Night the Silicates Came. Or you may have never even heard of it at all. But it does star Peter Cushing, so it's got to be halfway decent. Island of Terror. The slithering silicates are coming. Turn page and meet the Creepers. Yeah, meet the Creepers. That was a Rob Zombie song, wasn't it? Peter Cushing gets top billing, as well he should. All right. Here we get the whole cast. The pictures are printed the correct way, but the caption is sideways. Astounding. From an experiment on life came a devastating death. Wow. An unknown death. What was the killer terror? Man. What monster had science created? That's it for that movie. Now we get The Monster Speaks. Of course, that's the great Christopher Lee as the Frankenstein monster in the first of the Hammer Frankenstein movies, Curse of Frankenstein. Christopher Lee answers fans' questions. The first person wrote to ask about how the scene was done in the 1959 The Mummy, where the spear went through the mummy. Christopher Lee is explaining how the effect was done. Lee says that he felt that Lon Chaney Sr., playing the Hunchback of Notre Dame here, had great personal magic. And talks about some of his own favorite fright films. What do you wish your fans wouldn't do? Basically, his answer is, I hope my fans never stop taking an interest in what I do. Jeez, it's kind of early in the magazine to be pushing back issues, isn't it? Okay, here's the thing I'm most interested in. Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. It seems obvious to us now to make a movie where two successful monsters meet and fight. But at the time this happened, it was a novel idea. There had been 4 Universal Studios Frankenstein movies, and there had recently been the Wolfman. And they got the novel idea, it was novel at the time, what if we put 2 of our great monsters together into one movie? That'll make it twice as scary, right? So they made Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, written by the same scriptwriter that wrote the original The Wolfman 2 years earlier. The Wolfman was 1941. This film was 1943. And watch the fur fly, as they say. You knew that there was going to be a fight between the 2 of them. You just didn't know who was going to come out on top. So as we get into it, of course, Lon Chaney Jr. plays Lawrence Talbot, the Wolfman. And he's looking for a way to end his life so that he doesn't keep resurrecting as the Wolfman. He thinks that Dr. Frankenstein, whose weird experiments in life and death were notorious, he thinks Dr. Frankenstein will have the answer. So he seeks out Dr. Frankenstein, only to find that the doctor is dead, but his monster still lives. Now, the Frankenstein monster in this film was played by Bela Lugosi, who famously played Dracula in the 1931 production of Dracula. At the time that Bela Lugosi filmed his scenes as the Frankenstein monster, they were going to keep a plot element left over from the previous Frankenstein movie, that the Frankenstein monster was blind. At the end of Ghost of Frankenstein, the Frankenstein monster had been rendered blind. So Lugosi portrayed the character that way, and he started acting as if the monster were blind, and he thought, what would the monster do to get around? So he started reaching his arms out and groping through the air with his Frankenstein hands. And this is where we get the trope, the cliche almost, of the Frankenstein monster walking with his arms stretched out. It comes from this film. The problem is that in the final finished product of the film, they omitted any reference to the fact that the monster was blind. So all you had was Bela Lugosi portraying the Frankenstein monster, stumbling around and grabbing, seemingly mindlessly grabbing through the air. If you know this and you watch the scenes, especially when Larry Talbot first thaws out the monster and is asking him where Dr. Frankenstein's diaries are, if you watch that scene, it's crystal clear that the monster is supposed to be blind, the way that Bela Lugosi is portraying him. Did you ever notice, this is kind of a minute detail, but the surviving daughter of Dr. Frankenstein is played by Ilona Massey. Well, her character, the young adult daughter of the last Dr. Frankenstein, her character in Ghost of Frankenstein was played by Evelyn Ankers. But they could hardly get Evelyn Ankers to come and play that role here, because in the previous Wolfman film, Evelyn Ankers had played Gwen Conliffe, the female lead. So I don't know if they intentionally chose to recast the role for that reason, but it saved a whole lot of confusion, I think. Lionel Atwill is great in everything he ever does. Dwight Frye is, a very underrated, I think, horror actor. He never really got the lead roles, but he was very good in the roles he did portray in the film Dracula, Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, The Vampire Bat. He was in quite a number of horror films, and of course he was back in this one as one of the villagers. Patrick Knowles working on the monster. Oh, wow. Okay, so by the time that they made this film in 1943, the Universal Studios monster films was a well-oiled machine. They knew that they were going to continue making these for a bit and that they would be pretty successful. So when it came time to do this film, Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, they made a point of doing a very big photo shoot of the Wolfman alone and the Frankenstein monster alone, and of the Frankenstein monster and the Wolfman together. There's tons of these photos out there, and you can spot them easily enough because they really emphasized the long shadows at weird angles. And I just love the pictures that came out of this photo shoot, especially the Wolfman ones. But the Frankenstein ones are great too. So to show Larry Talbot transforming from man into werewolf, they would have him lay still and then take a still photograph of him and then add a little bit of the monster makeup, take another photograph, add a little bit more monster makeup, take another photograph. And when you showed these all together, it looked like the werewolf hair was sprouting out of his face and the face was distorting into werewolf shape. All of the transformations that Universal did for the Wolfman were reasonably good. This is really the best one. The scene in the hospital where Talbot is looking out the window and goes through his transformation. It might be because he was laying down and they had his head positioned. This pillow was not a real pillow. It was a more solid object that looked like a pillow. And they did that specifically to pose his head in a firm position so that he wouldn't move even a little as they added the makeup. I'm sure it was very painstaking, but it was worth it. The finished result was worth it. This is the smoothest transformation into the Wolfman that there is. Look at these theater decorations for Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman. The shock show of the year. Oh my gosh. You ever wonder where the mad scientists get these slabs that are just the right size to strap down a human being or human-shaped monster? I mean, do they special order them or something? Don't people ask questions when they order a slab with straps on it? I love when they get into the ruins of the castle and find the lab equipment, and it's so old and enshrouded in spider webs that there's even a piece of equipment. There's a lever that's floating loose. It's detached from the machine and it's just dangling from spider webs. That's just a great detail. I really think that Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman is the monster mashup that Universal did right, because the story worked for both characters, Larry Talbot and the Frankenstein monster. After this, they started getting greedy and they put more monsters into the same movie. The next film was House of Frankenstein, where you had Dracula and the Wolfman and the Frankenstein monster. And there just wasn't room for everybody. The characters didn't fit together. In fact, Dracula never even interacted with the other two monsters. So this is the one where they did it right. And this was the real knockdown, drag-out fight that fans wanted to see. Oh boy. Readers probably looked at this and thought, is there a new King Kong movie coming out? No. Now, Don Post, the famous makeup artist and special effects artist, was putting together a King Kong display. He was making a 12-foot King Kong, and it shows you how he set about constructing it, putting the detail on it, and then here's the finished product. See? Do you recognize this month's mystery photo? Here's the answer to last month's. It's from The Unearthly. Yep. You can send away for home movies of your favorite spook shows. The ABCs of aliens, beasts, and creatures. You can tell Forrest J. Ackerman himself must have had a hand in this. I won't subject you to the whole thing, but here, so you get the hang of it. A is for Atwill, that sinister fella. B is for Boris, Black, Bartland, and Bella. C is for Cheney, Carradine, Cushing, Caligari, and Katz. D is for dinosaurs and Dracula, one of them bats. So, you know, it's like 6-year-old humor, really. But that's what Famous Monsters was known for. Monsterama. Half the drama of any space movie is the meeting up with the other life, the strange form of creature inhabiting another world. Here are a few of them. Of course, this is from This Island Earth. The great Ymir from 20 Million Miles to Earth. The less great Creeping Unknown. And the not even a little bit great creature from It Conquered the World, which I often point out is really a pretty good little B movie, except for the monster itself. In other words, the movie is, you know, it works pretty well until you catch sight of the monster. And then you're like, oh, never mind. Tell me this doesn't look like a monster the Power Rangers would fight. Yeah. World Without End. Also, the this is misleading. The Beast with a Million Eyes didn't really have a million eyes. It was a creature that could see through the eyes of lower life forms, other animals. It could spy on us through the eyes of birds and, you know, dogs and cats and things like that. So in that sense, it was the Beast with a Million Eyes. This is a publicity image from King Dinosaur. Of course, it's 1966. They got to have Batman stuff in here. Ooh, get your own Mystery Man mask. Oh, there's the deadly mantis. Wow. I wonder, did any of you end up ordering these when you were a kid? They must have just sent you a packet of seeds, right? For the Venus flytrap. Did they even sprout? Who else wants a live monkey? This may or may not have sprouted. I don't know the answer to that. But sadly, I do know the answer to this. Yes, they really were selling live monkeys. It wasn't a trick or an illusion or something. They were actually selling live monkeys through the mail. The men behind the monsters. Recognize this guy? This is according to the Outer Limits, this is how human beings will look 1,000,000 years in the future. Oh, here you can get your guillotine for 98 cents. All right, this is a publicity image from Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And this is a reprint of Forrest J. Ackerman's initial review of Invasion of the Body Snatchers when he first saw it 10 years before this magazine came out. And there's Wonder Woman for 98 cents. Oh. Well, it's the Monster Kids version of a dollhouse. You can get the Addams Family Haunted House playset. Exact copy of famous TV haunted house. Kit can be assembled by anyone. Complete with creaky shutters. Yep, gables, chimney, porch. Yeah, okay. Not available. Oh, now available at a low. How much is it? $1.98. Oh, $1.98. Wow. Houses really were cheaper in the 60s. If you enjoy classic monsters and vintage horror, you would love my book series, the Mourner's Woods books. I'm self-published on Amazon, where I've written a series of horror novels that all take place in a haunted forest. Each novel brings a completely new cast of characters into Mourner's Woods, where they face a new threat in each book. It's got ghosts, monsters, banshees, giant bugs. There's a different threat in each Mourner's Woods book. And I recapture the vibe and feel of 20th century horror, but in a modern setting. My name again is Paul Edwards. My books are the Mourner's Woods books. Thanks for spending some time looking through Famous Monsters of Filmland number 42 with me. And I meant to mention earlier, this issue is in really good shape. I was very pleased to pick this up. So thanks for letting me share it with you. I'll see you in Mourner's Woods.